Humans have been killing each other in their masses since the beginning of time. Wars, massacres, genocides, and holocausts are depressingly common occurrences in the history of mankind. But there were also many times in history when animals were massacred in large numbers, including cats, dogs, and other animals under human control. These massacres were not due to a shortage of food, but instead as a result of superstitious, religious belief, economic or political motives, or for mere entertainment. Today we will look at some of the most curious and terrifying instances of animal massacres over the years. Number 1. Euro 2012, Ukraine. Many animal rights associations denounced a supposed killing of stray dogs led by the Ukrainian government during the build-up for the Euro 2012 soccer championship. As many other more impoverished countries in Eastern Europe did exactly the same. Ukraine has lots of roaming street dogs. Authorities feared it would reflect negatively on how visitors would perceive the country. So they hatched up a plan to clear that image and clear the streets of cats and dogs. However, the plan did not work, and eventually they got the reputation of being puppy killers, and they deserved it. While exact numbers are hard to find, some say that at least 9,000 animals were killed in 3 different cities. A few photos showing the carcass of dead animals became viral, and bowing to international pressure, the Ukrainian government announced a 6-month ban on the killings, and ordered the local municipalities to build more animal shelters for the stray dogs, instead of culling them. However, it is not clear if the measures were followed by local authorities, or if it was just a way for the government to save face. Number 2. Sled dog execution, Canada. After the end of the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, the number of tourists who wanted to take a ride in sled pushed by dogs diminished considerably. The sled dog tour industry went into crisis, and some companies were not able to continue if they did not cut costs, which meant reducing the numbers of dogs they maintained. One of the companies, who were forced to cut costs, chased and shot the dogs execution style. Some managers even slit the throats of 300 dogs, as they could not afford to maintain them. The curious thing is that the affair was only discovered because the manager himself filed a claim with the board asking for compensation for having suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder after the killings. Later, mass graves containing the remains of 56 dead dogs were found, although the actual number is a lot higher. The case drew international outrage, and the only positive outcome was that it triggered a task force that toughened laws on animal cruelty. Number 3. Cat burning and cat throwing festivals, Europe. In the Middle Ages, cats were associated with witchcraft and Satanism, so it was not uncommon for them to be killed in high numbers. In most cases, they were burned in giant fires in the main square of the cities, as people danced and cheered around. In one of those occasions, even the King of France took part. In some occasions, they suffered from more original forms of death. In Belgium, for instance, they were traditionally thrown from the Belfry Tower into the square below, to the amusement of the crowds. Today the killings are remembered every 3 years, during a parade, which is however a cat-friendly event, in which only toy cats are thrown from the tower, and people dress as cats and dance in the street, perhaps in a request of forgiveness to cats for their former ways. Number 4. The swine flu killing, Egypt. During the swine flu scare of 2009, Egypt ordered the killing of its whole population of pigs. More than 300,000 animals were killed in a short time. While no cases of swine flu were ever documented in Egypt, the culling was announced as a preventive measure, in order to avoid possible contamination. Others, however, say that it was a punishment measure against Christians, since they are the only ones who raise pigs in the country, because Islam prohibits the consumption of swine. None of the pigs killed had the flu, and they were disposed of without their flesh being consumed. However, the measure later backfired badly on the government. In Egypt, the pigs were traditionally fed with the same organic trash that otherwise littered the cities. The swine were basically used as recycling machines. After their sudden disappearance, the streets of Cairo was covered with tons of trash, ironically exposing people to all sorts of diseases. It is possible that this added to the general discontent of the population with the government, and helped the dethroning of Mubarak during the spring. Number 5. The Great Cat Massacre. In 1730, in Paris, a group of apprentices, as a revenge for what they believed were bad working conditions, tortured and killed all the cats they could find, including the pet of their master's wife. This true story is based in the diaries of an apprentice, who together with an accomplice killed hundreds of cats in one night. The young men that worked in the printing shop received only crumbs to eat, and believed to be generally mistreated, while at the same time, they saw their masters pampering their cats. So they decided to take revenge on the felines. Several cats, including the pet of their master's wife, were captured and put into sacks. Many were killed on the spot, with an iron bar. Others had to suffer a trial, in which they were finally condemned to be hanged, all to the amusement of the workers of the shop, and to considerable less amusement of the masters. Number 6. The killing of pets prior to the war in England, 1939. An almost untold story of the Second World War, is how after the panic of the oncoming war set in, the British government mounted a huge campaign to counsel citizens, to get rid of their beloved pets in order to avoid their death, or suffering during the bombings. As many as 750,000 pets were put down in just 1 week in 1939. While their deaths were humane, some argue that they were not necessary at all, and merely represented a symptom of war hysteria. More than the bombings, the main threat for pets was the lack of food, since there were no rations for animals, and food was scarce during wartime. However, many pets were not abandoned by their owners and were able to make it, and sanctuaries established for dogs and cats functioned during the war, and saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of animals. Number 7. The Gorkha Festival. The largest animal sacrifice festival in the world, happens every 5 years in Nepal. The festival is in honor of the Hindu goddess of power. We tend to think of Hindus as vegetarians, who would not hurt a cow, which they consider sacred. That may be true for cows, but apparently it does not apply for water buffaloes, chickens, goats, pigs, and rats, which are sacrificed in hundreds of thousands. In 2009, it is estimated that between 250,000 and 500,000 animals were killed during the 3 days of the festival, which was witnessed by at least 1 million worshippers. The way it works is that participants bring their own animals to the feast. The animals are then decapitated with traditional kukuri knives, by 250 authorized slaughterers. The blood of the animals is supposed to bring good luck. Afterwards the remains are sold to tanneries, or eaten. The next festival will take place in 2024. Number 8. The Pet Massacre in Puerto Rico. In 2007, a company called Animal Control Solutions was hired by the local government to help control the number of stray dogs and cats. Unfortunately, their solution involved throwing the live animals from a bridge. To make matters worse, most of the animals that were killed belonged to regular owners, in nearby projects in the poorer parts of the city. Residents found their beloved pets either dead, or left with broken bones, at the bottom of the bridge. After the event, thousands of Puerto Ricans took to the streets to protest, and eventually those responsible for the company were taken to court for animal abuse, something which is rare in the country. However, they were found not guilty, and soon released. Number 9. The Zoo Massacre, Japan, 1943. The following is a story on preventive killing of animals during wartime, only it does not involve cats and dogs, but the animals kept in a zoo. The Japanese government believed that the animals could escape during the bombings, and become dangerous, so they devised a plan to destroy them before that could happen. It was a heartbreaking event, not so much because of the number of animals killed, between 25 and 50, but because of the way in which they died. The larger animals, including 3 elephants and 2 hippos, were simply starved to death. It took weeks for the elephants to die. Other animals such as tigers and panthers were poisoned. The event was also used as war propaganda, to prepare the population for the reality of the oncoming airstrikes. The animals were described as martyrs, that were dying for their country, even though they did not choose their fate. Number 10. The Zanesville killing, Ohio, U.S. In 2011, a Vietnam veteran who was heavily in debt, had been abandoned by his wife, and was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, decided to end his misery. Before shooting himself in the head, he opened the gates to liberate all the 56 exotic animals that he kept in his private farm, including bears, lions, leopards, monkeys, wolves, and 18 Bengali tigers which are in grave danger of extinction. The idea of these animals roaming free among the local human population did not make anyone feel very secure, and soon the police was called to intervene. They attempted at first to shoot the tigers with tranquilizers, but that only made him more enraged, so they decided to shoot to kill. In the final count, 48 of the 56 animals ended up dead, including all the tigers. One monkey was still seemingly at large for weeks after the event, but the police called off the search, believing it was probably eaten by one of the felines after the liberation.